Okay, I would like to start now with a brief introduction. We're starting about 5 minutes late, but I think that's as long as we should go. There's still quite a number of people who signed up that have not logged in yet, but they can catch up with us. So my name is Cecil Murray, and I'm a SCORE mentor. For those of you who didn't sign up through SCORE, just a little background on who SCORE is. The mission of SCORE is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. So we're made up of volunteers, and we come under the Small Business Administration as far as organizing us and so forth. We have a chapter here that's located in Greenville that covers Greenville, Oconee, and Anderson counties, and a little bit beyond that, but primarily those counties, and we want to welcome you all. The volunteers for SCORE are retired mostly. There are a few people that haven't retired yet, but we're all experienced either in starting our own businesses or at senior levels within other organizations. And our role is to try to help you with any business questions and so forth that you may have. So those of you who are online now who already have a SCORE mentor, for example, you can send questions to myself or Ben, but continue to work with your SCORE mentor. And the SCORE itself in this area works very closely with the Small Business Development Center at Clemson. And I'm going to introduce Benny Smith, who manages the SBDC at Clemson, and he'll be our presenter today. So, Benny, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Cecil. Appreciate all you, Jerry, Fred, and your entire team does at the Piedmont chapter. I would just like to recognize the excellence that we have in our SCORE Piedmont chapter here in the upstate. Our particular chapter has been cited multiple times in the past 10 years, quite honestly, and held up as a chapter of excellence nationally. And that's not an easy lift, and to be consistent along those lines speaks volumes to your teammates and your fellow leaders. So really appreciate all you guys do. As Cecil mentioned, I work for Clemson University with our center is the Small Business Development Center. And from a statewide perspective, we actually work with our partners at the University of South Carolina, Winthrop, and SC State to do what we do statewide. So we brand ourselves as the South Carolina Small Business Development Center. We're part of a national network of accredited small business development centers. You'll find counterparts to us in all 50 states and U.S. territories. At just as SCORE, per Cecil's mention, is supported through the Small Business Administration on the federal level. So is our Small Business Development Center network. So therefore, between SCORE and our Small Business Development Center, we can provide free and confidential guidance to our small business folks here in South Carolina, whether you're an existing business or, in our case, what brings us together, somebody looking to start a business. So we're honored to do that. It's a labor of love. I've been with Clemson University since 1998. Prior to that, I was a banking officer and really enjoy what we do. It's a labor of love for me. And I would say this, I've got a close friend who built a business and took it all the way public successfully. That's no easy chore, as you guys, some of you know very well. It's a very rare feat and accomplishment, quite honestly. So I like to quiz folks like that, right? And ask him the secret of his secret of building a business to that level, really from ground up. And it's very simple. He said, Ben, you really need a purpose. You need to wrap a plan behind that purpose to back it up. You need to put in the work every day and enjoy the ride. Make sure you surround yourself with folks that you enjoy working with. Make it a labor of love. I could say this for my friends at SCORE and my teammates throughout the state of South Carolina with our SBDC. It's a labor of love. Really enjoy what we do. It is a calling for us, and we feel like it's our path to give back and make a difference. So we're really excited about what we do. And again, it is free and confidential, and we're going to wrap back toward the end and make sure you're able to connect with us, and we're going to actually reach out to follow up with you as soon as tomorrow. So with that said, our learning objectives are very straightforward. First of all, we'd like to introduce to you our process, our suggested process for building a business, and it is a process. It's a little different than the national standard of that you may run across, but we're going to actually nuance that and share with you our thoughts just from experience as to why we suggest approaching this particular challenge of building a business, starting a business, and or building a business in a sequential method that we're going to lay out. So that's at the heart of why we're together. Beyond that, we're going to share with you and hopefully empower you and position you to assess your compatibility with owning a business. Okay, and beyond that, we're here to hopefully prepare you to at least lay the framework and give you a base understanding and align you with the support resources to help you move forward and actually assess your idea, any idea, as a business opportunity, whether it be the current idea that you're working on, or it may be an idea that will come down the road. So again, it's all about process for us. And then last but certainly not least, one learning objective we would have in our time together is to connect you with support resources available for you guys to leverage, lean on, and we're going to encourage you to do that. And hopefully you will. I'll just kind of start by saying Entrepreneurship The Odds. Most of the time we're face-to-face in person. We usually present this program, Cecil and I, about every other month at Tri-County Tech in just outside of Clemson with our partners, Rick and Sandra. Rick Cawthorn's the dean over there for continuing ed, and Sandra Strickland really runs the show, and they're have been tremendous partners for us, and we want to mention them and appreciate them. But it's a little different format. We usually have a lot of conversation up front to kind of understand what type of project you're looking at, what's your idea, where you are in the process. I think Cecil and I discussed, I think with the Zoom format, a couple of things. One is, if I were in your shoes, I don't know if I would really be comfortable sharing that type of information through this particular format. And because you can't really look around the room and see who's in the room and make that guarded decision. So again, it may be something of a confidential nature at this point from your perspective. So with that said, let me kind of float this out to, if you want to respond through chat, fine. If not, it's, I'll just kind of float this out. But I do want you to be somewhat active on your end. So kind of let me ask you this, the entrepreneurship and the odds here in the U.S., the most fertile environment, arguably, that's ever existed for building a business. Now let's set the current COVID-19 business climate aside, all other things equal. But, from that standpoint, what would be the odds of successfully starting a business? And let's just say pushing that business out 5 years and then 10. So, if I kind of share that out with you, we'll get typically a myriad of responses. So really, small business failure, this is recently updated. The sourcing is the Advocate's Office at the Small Business Administration. Most small businesses that they're aware of fail within 5 years. The vast majority, quite honestly. Merely 1 in 3 see a 10-year anniversary. And so if you look at that, that's somewhat daunting. So, if you'd almost think, well, gosh, guys, we should probably just shut this thing down and see what's on television. But just hold on. The big reason is why. Why? No viable market. Again, this is based on long-term horizontal data from the SBA. This has been very consistent over approaching 4 decades. No viable market. No compelling answer to the question, why us in the marketplace? Top reason. Next, lack of adequate capital on the front end. I came out of the banking industry. I can tell you the time for you to come to a bank and ask for money is when you're in a desperate way needing money. And that's especially the case for a small business, just due to the risk profile of a small business in general. The other issue is inadequate skill sets. Now, Cecil and I have had a lot of conversation. We both agree the top two, no viable market, no compelling answer to why us, and lack of adequate capital on the front end. We really feel like that's a symptom to inadequate planning on the front end, quite honestly. The inadequate skill set, yeah, we all have blind spots. We have strengths and weaknesses, honestly, but we may have a blind spot such that we've got a critical weakness that we really need to be competent in, given the challenge of building a business in this context that we are totally unaware. It's in our blind spot and we're unaware. So part of what we want to do is try to mitigate this. So our support, that would be, again, from Cecil's group, our friends at the Piedmont chapter SCORE, as well as my teammates throughout the state of South Carolina with our South Carolina Small Business Development Center, is really designed to mitigate these issues, these challenges that drive high small business failure on the front end of here in the U.S. We do that primarily, as I mentioned earlier, through the free and confidential consulting, low to no cost training. This is an example of that. And then last but certainly not least, referral to complementary resources when we need guidance regarding your project that's beyond our scope of expertise. So again, that's really why we exist. And this would be your challenges, and hopefully you'll see the value proposition in leveraging SCORE and the SBDC moving forward. So with that said, entrepreneurship, the process that we do advocate, is very straightforward. We kind of laid it out in 6 steps. And the process then would follow sequentially: personal fit, market feasibility, financial feasibility, then complete the plan as needed, pre-launch activities planning at that point, implement and control will be the last. And of course, it never ends. It's a continued feedback loop that would allow you, and really mandates constant attention once it's put in motion, just like anything else that's living. So our process is very straightforward. If you'll notice, I've shaded in green the font of the first 4 steps. That's really where we want you to focus. And that's where it would be our job to meet you wherever you are in the process and make sure that there were no steps that really need to be tended to that were skipped. So it's all about, in my way of thinking, preliminary feasibility, and then we get into the pre-launch activities. I have folks come to me all the time, guys, and it's, hey, Ben, I need help with this plan. I've already got my LLC set up. We've got a partnership agreement. We're locked and loaded. We've got our bank account. And, so now we need help. We're not exactly sure, what to do next. Well, those folks are aware. They're in step 5, the way we lay it out. That's okay. Again, our job is to meet you wherever you are. That's okay. It's not where I would suggest you begin, simply because if it's not feasible, why go through the cost and the energy of really getting into some pre-launch activities would be our suggestion, or really that we would push for. So I hope you see the logic in the process. I hope it makes sense to you. If not, if you see something in particular that you'd like to ask, just throw it in the chat. If I recognize that, I'll kind of field it if it's relevant at the time. If not, we're going to ask you to have any questions that you could load in the chat at the end, and we'll actually clear all questions in a Q&A at the very end. So, but this is our process, very straightforward. Again, we're not trying to bombard you with an 80-page business plan on the front end, not knowing if this is even the right time and thing for you, let alone the preliminary market study type elements. So again, hopefully this makes sense to you. So with that said, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on each step of the process as we walk through. First step, lowest hurdle, first thing you should deal with, personal fit. Is this right for me? Okay. Is it the right time for you? So what is your goal? Do you have a hobby? You're just trying to say, maybe you had a hobby and somebody mentioned, hey, you might as well start a little small business. You can wipe out some cost and maybe earn a little side income. That's a goal. Maybe you've got a hobby that you know it makes a little difference in somebody's life, a little pick me up. And that's really what you want to accomplish, that, and see if you can cover the cost of doing that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That could be a small business. Maybe you've got a goal to actually create a full-time job for yourself. And maybe your goal would be, if you could do that, that's great. And then I want to push it and see if I can scale this up and put more people to work such that they can support their family and serve folks the way they need to be served or the way they deserve to be served at the same time. That's great. That's a goal. We can get behind either one of those, and we see both, and it could be almost anywhere in between. These are all considerations that you would want to think about on the front end. So what is your goal? And then, is entrepreneurship for you? Cecil, now how folks come to us, we ask this question all the time. All right, why are you trying to, what are you trying to do here? All right, maybe they've got a goal. What do you think your day's going to be like? What do you think your week's going to be like? What about your year? I have some folks, you guys may or may not believe this, I'll have some folks, when I ask them why they want to start their own business, they'll say, because Ben, I'm tired of working 40 hours a week. And I just have to pause and say, let me call a couple longtime clients. I just want you to have a conversation with them and understand really what you're getting into. It's a lifestyle commitment. It's a family commitment up front. I've got some clients that have been in certain types of businesses for a long time, and they're extremely successful to a point now they have the luxury of working less than they did for decades to get it there. That's not the norm. Again, we just want you to understand what you're thinking about getting into before you get into it. So it has implications on your lifestyle. It has implications on your family. It has implications on your credit, quite honestly, and on your savings to a certain extent. So all these are things you need to think about on the front end. And again, that's the first thing you should be thinking about. In addition, does it kind of match your skill set? Are you by nature kind of a strategic thinker? Do you think big picture, a couple moves ahead? If you do, you would most likely absolutely love building a business. If that type of thinking bores you, then it's something that we just need to have a conversation. It doesn't mean that you can't learn to love it when you are exposed to some tools that could make you, help you be a little more intentional about it. But again, it kind of comes with the territory. So these are all things that you want to explore. And again, your SCORE mentor, and hopefully it'll be, and we'd like to wrap as much expertise and assistance around you as you can stand. And we're not mutually exclusive, and neither of us charge a fee for that, and everything's confidential. But your SCORE mentor and or your SBDC consultant will really help walk you through this particular set of questions on personal fit. I would say this: assume success. And if you succeed, again, is this really the path you want to be on? just understanding it's going to be really a commitment, a wholehearted commitment. Is this really the way you feel like you should be serving others at this point in your life? So that's what I would ask you. Assume success. Is this the path you really want? Now assume failure. I'll have folks, when we talk about this, they'll say, Ben, failure's not an option. Well, quite honestly, you don't hold all the cards. And it's just one of those things. We just know by the data, 33.33% would be the ones that succeed over 10 years. So 2/3 won't. You just need to look at that. Now we've exposed the top drivers of failure. And now we've got a support system, resource system through the SBDC and SCORE to wrap around you to help mitigate that. And now we're exposing you to a process that will further help mitigate that risk and hopefully make this a lot more pleasant a journey and experience for you. But failure is always, again, you don't hold all the cards. And even working through the process, there's still some uncertainty until you're in it. Boxing legend Mike Tyson has a great quote. You may have heard it. He said, everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the mouth. That's the same thing, man. When you plan, we do all we can to wrap this plan around you, to wash out as much uncertainty up front as possible, to make sure you're in the right spot from a competitive standpoint on positioning. But how will you know until you know? How will you know till you're actually in the battle? Competing day in and day out? Well, you won't until you get that feedback. And then it's going to be part of your challenge as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is then to become like a Marine. What's the Marine's motto? Improvise, adapt, overcome. So again, that really excites some of you. It may cause some of you to shrink and say, that's not me. Well, if that makes you uncomfortable, again, it doesn't mean entrepreneurship or building your own business is not for you, but we definitely want to pause and drill in and discuss that a little further before you commit resources to the project, if at all possible. So again, personal fit, it's all about, is this for you? Is it the right time for you? And can you afford to do this, quite honestly? I just say starting a business to me is a lot like marriage. I've been married to my high school sweetheart, Tracy, for 37 plus years. No regrets here. But I would say it's kind of like marriage. It's easy to get into, and it can be very painful to get out of. And I've had clients, and I've had even friends that have experienced that on both fronts, unfortunately. But it's a decision. Is something, you really do need to kind of, the old carpenter's rule, measure twice and cut once. That's just really kind of what we're suggesting when it comes to building your business. This is the lowest hurdle, personal fit. Preliminary market feasibility. This is where we're going to spend most of our time together, quite honestly. And so let's just take a peek at what we're looking at. Who needs it? Who needs what you're offering? Or what you're proposing to offer. Exactly who needs it? No, that's not rhetorical. That's very specific. And I have clients, I'll say, who's your market? They'll say, Ben, everybody's my market. Well, we really need you to drill down on that. And let me ask it this way then. Who's your primary market? Can you name the top 2 or 3? We really need to understand, we need you to understand who that is. And again, we need to identify that. It's really at the heart of preliminary market feasibility. Who needs it? Who provides it? Direct and indirect. So you could have competition. For example, maybe you're coming up with a new soft drink, some kind of a root beer. Okay, so you've got direct competition in the marketplace. You've got other soft drinks and other root beer. I'd probably put all that in direct competition. But you also have indirect competition. You have water. You have other types of beverages, juices, etc. So we just need to know, okay, who needs it and who provides it already. You really need to get your head around that on the front end. I'll have some folks, again, I'll ask, believe this or not, this is very common. I'll say, who's your competition? you'll say, there's no competition. Well, let us help you find some through this process. And then again, we can help wash out, hopefully, some risk that drives that almost 70% failure rate here in the US with new businesses. This is the key. Guys, this is the key. What sets you apart? What differentiates you? If you can't answer that question, then you're not ready. Absolutely, you're not ready. If you can't answer what sets you apart, to whom? The folks who need this, your market. What sets you apart? Sets me apart from whom? From your competition, direct and indirect. That's extremely important. And we need to flesh that out again here early in the process. Make sense so far? Okay. I see you guys shaking your heads. No, I'm lying. I can't see you. But I hope you are. I hope you're shaking your head. What barriers exist to market entry? Would it be helpful to understand that? Sure. Some small businesses have very low barriers to entry. For example, residential janitorial service, very low barriers to entry. You could just decide, I'm going to start a cleaning service. I said residential, but it could be residential and also office, those types of things. Now, you get into the industrial, you're probably going to have to spend some money on some capital equipment before you're going to be able to compete. Scrubbers, buffers, those types of things. But otherwise, it's, broom, mop, dusters, those types of things, and you're off to the races. Very low market entry. There's other types of businesses. There could be moderate to extensive market barriers to entry regarding capital intensity on the front end, and maybe even some technical expertise or credentials that could be needed. Maybe you want to be a dentist, for example. Maybe you want to be a general contractor. So all these would require a little more lifting to enter the market. We really need to understand if there are any potential barriers for you regarding market entry, when, not later, on the front end. Again, this is all part of the second hurdle that we're suggesting we need to clear here in step 2. It's all about preliminary market feasibility. How will you actually distribute what you're selling? You need to understand that. It'd be helpful to understand the industry, the distribution channel that's commonplace in the industry. We need to understand what's happening there. We're in a market-driven economy. Those market pressures converge margins, price points, cost. They push efficiencies. You'll see that manifest itself in distribution channels, quite honestly, among other aspects of a business. So we really need to dig in and kind of see. We need to educate ourselves about the industry players and what's going on in distribution, so we'd understand what your potential best mix would be when it comes to distribution. We need to do that early, again, because we may find out, I can bake this good, or I can slow cook these ribs, and I can get help with the barcoding and make sure it's DHEC signs off on it. How am I going to get it on the grocers, in the grocer's case? Well, we'd love to kind of understand what that would take on the front end before you're about $20,000, $50,000 into this thing. And then you find out, oh my goodness, everybody and his sister's trying to do what I'm doing, and there's very little space, and it just takes, and that may not be the case, but we just need to understand. Again, uncertainty drives equals risk in business, and we're just trying to wash out as much as we can. What are the pricing criterion? I'll have folks, I'll ask them, what sets you apart? And I hear this a lot, and I know Cecil is shaking his head. Ben, I'm going to compete on price. I'm going to be the cheapest one out there, and I'm just going to compete on price. And I think eventually I'm probably kind of push that up where it needs to be. Well, that may be okay as long as you've got a strategy kind of behind that, such that you don't poison the well on pricing. So maybe some kind of early entry promotions, first customer promotions, early launch phase promotions, limited time only type stuff. But we need to be very intentional and careful about that. What frustrates a lot of our customers in these industries that are really low barriers to entry is a lot of folks do jump in and they don't really understand their pricing, but they can last as long as their working capital lasts. And as long as they're willing to work for little of nothing, and eventually they figure out they could be working for the competition, making more money than they are working for themselves, and they're getting nowhere. We see that a lot, and that's a frustration of a lot of the cleaning services and some of the subcontractors in certain spaces. Lawn care, for example, kind of comes to mind, and some others. Again, that's just part and parcel of the what you have to understand when you're getting into business. Your pricing needs to be sustainable, so it needs to be priced realistically. At the same time, you're competing against people who aren't playing by that same standard. They'll wash out, but in the meantime, they could really cost you a lot of business. They could make it painful, and by the time they wash out, they're probably going to have two right behind them. So you need to understand that, and part of your sales pitch then needs to be put that under the spotlight and explain what sets you apart even from those folks. And so, yeah, so we're kind of seeing how all this may come together. So step 2, preliminary market feasibility, just kind of wrapping this up. The bottom line here is business is about those you serve. It's really not about you. It's your business. And we do want it to be your baby. And we would really love for it to be part of your legacy and be that successful if that's part of your goal. But at the end of the day, it's really, what I'm doing here and what Cecil's doing here with you is not about us. It's about you. And the same thing from the perspective of any type of business that you're assessing. So you really have to drill in and understand from the client, the customers, the prospective customer's perspective, what would the experience be like given everything else they have to choose from. And that is really I think the key in preliminary market feasibility. So that's kind of the second hurdle. And just keep on moving if you guys are good with this. The next hurdle we come to, let's say we're clear of this. First hurdle, personal fit. Yeah, we're feeling really good about this. Is probably a great fit for you as a career option. Is probably a great time for you. So we're good with there. We poured in together and worked really hard together as a team to assess preliminary market feasibility. Yes, we're feeling pretty good about this. This is great. This is absolutely wonderful. What do we do now, Ben? Well, let's take a look now at what we've done and based on our work to date, and let's just see if we can do a little financial modeling and test kind of preliminary front-end feasibility from a financial standpoint. That way, we'll have more of an indication this thing would be feasible. So if we do that, how do we go about that? Well, we need to kind of put our heads together and figure out what would the likely ballpark startup cost be if you went forward? And then I can help you understand what viable sources of capital would fit that project scope. Okay, so that's a piece of it. Source and use of funds. We'll see in just an example of that here shortly. We need to understand what would be a reasonable break-even point for you. That would be helpful. If you said, okay, we're not just pulling this out of air, but until we actually create a financial modeling, which we're looking at be a really good tool for us to get our head around financial feasibility. What would be a reasonable break-even point would be a piece of that. And that would allow us to pay everybody involved. And that would include you as the business owner if you're working in the business. As an entrepreneur, as the big picture thinker, as the risk taker, I consider that working on the business. You're taking that risk, you're doing all the entrepreneur pieces, but if you're going to actually have a job inside the business, which most that we deal with do, then we need to make sure that you're actually able to pay yourself at market rate for that type of work, at least getting into the second and third year, at least. I'd love to see it sooner, but we need to make sure. And I've seen that mistake more than once. I've had folks unfortunately come to me and they've been banging around on something for 2, 3, 4 years, and they're still not paying themselves, or they're paying themselves a fraction of what they could be working for the competition with no risk at all, and actually have a lifestyle. So this is something we just need to make sure it's a viable business model, unless, again, it's just part of a hobby or part of a way for you to serve others from an intrinsic standpoint, and you don't need that full income. That's a whole different animal. But we can kind of deal with that as we move forward. So the other consideration here is for preliminary financial feasibility is would the business model as projected provide not only for you to pay all involved, including you as the owner, if you're working in the business at market rate within a reasonable period of time, does it also provide for sufficient cash flow? That's extremely important. Profits don't pay the bills, cash pays the bills, and access to it. And this is extremely important for us to understand. In addition to paying you if you're working in the business, as I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure the model gives a reasonable expectation for sufficient return on investment for the entrepreneur in you, the investor in you, the one that's actually the owner, that's working on the business. Okay, so we want to make sure we do that. How much would that annualized return on investment be, Ben? Well, it depends on the type of business that you're getting into. Each industry has its own unique risk unique to the industry. All startups share common startup early entry risk, but then you get some variation in risk components that are relative to different types, different industries. And so that's something that we can actually help you handicap. I typically put a discount rate on a project when we're doing this work with you, and then we kind of get to where we need to be on this assessment. So again, this is nothing you need to know how to do, but this is kind of showing you what we're going to work through. And honestly, I'd prefer kind of taking the lead as we're working through this with you, instead of pushing it all on you on the front end personally. Just from experience. The last thing I would say here on preliminary financial feasibility, if nothing else, come away with this: cash is king. Cash is king. You cannot stay in business if you don't have, if you're not solvent on cash flow. That's it. It's over. So that's you just need to have that ingrained in your brain, and then that's something Cecil and I have a close friend and a colleague, Terry McKinney, who's worked this program with us for, probably over 10 years. And Terry built a successful auto parts and mechanic service business up in the state of Maine. He built that business up. He sold it as his means of retirement. And then he came south and found us, and we're glad he did. He would say this, Terry would, to you if he were here. He said, every day I opened my door at the shop, when I turned the key, I knew exactly how much I needed to book on the top end, gross sales, such that I could earn my pay that day. As a small business owner, you really need to understand that, and you will be able to get to that level, and we can help you get there, but you just need to understand cash is king. It's absolutely critical, and you need to understand how these parts would work on the front end before we actually pull the trigger on this. Again, this is part of measuring twice and cutting once type of deal, and we're not cutting yet. Okay, we're still measuring here. Okay, financial plan. So to complement the tool that we would use, typically I'll work with you to develop and or your mentor, SCORE mentor or other SBDC consultant will work with you. We've got the software to help make this very simple process. we'll work with you to develop a financial plan as part of the process. It's going to entail a source and use of funds schedule, projected income statements. Typically, I like to see 3 years annualized and at least 1 year monthly. Then you'll see cash flow projections. We break that down by month. So 36 months of cash flow projections with each model that typically I would produce. We can push that out further, but I wouldn't do it any less than 3 would be my suggestion while we're testing feasibility on the front end. Balance sheet estimates based on proposal, break-even calculation for year 1, and then the feasibility analysis. So this is very common to a financial plan components. This is what this looks like. Bear with me. And guys, you're going to have a chance to give us an eval at the end. I hope you'll remember all the good times we had. Put away the red pens. Help us out with this. Don't hold this against me. This usually we're in a classroom, and this is like a 20 by 30 screen. We're going to actually send you a full copy of the presentation, and you'll be able to drill in. But really, this is just an example. I actually created this earlier today and folded it in. This is based on, I used it as a secondhand store, as one that I modeled, secondhand store. This is very close to a real project that I worked not that long ago in the upstate. And they've launched, and they've been very successful so far, knock on wood. So if you just look at it, this kind of lays out, okay, what do I need money for? Well, it just lays it out here for you. If it's a fixed asset, if you do not own the property, and this one, they were not purchasing real estate or improvements thereupon, they were actually had some leasehold improvements. So they're going to be leasing space, and the landlord's taking care of some of that, but by their negotiation, they're going to have $50,000 worth of leasehold improvements to put into the space. They're going to have capital equipment of $20,000 estimated, and then fixtures and furnishings. This is mainly office fixtures and furnishings, and then kind of racks in the retail space. As they're doing all used, so about 10 grand there. So other cost, well, they're going to have to train up a team before they open the doors. They'll have some, so they're going to actually have to have them on salary for a little while. Those folks will actually help them get everything set up and tested and do some of the final cleanup that otherwise would have had to been done by the contractor. So they cut their $50,000 budget, but they're going to need some pre-opening salaries and wages to supplement. Okay, so we've got that earmark here. Prepaid insurance premiums. Okay, they're going to need some liability insurance is what they want to have coverage. They've got to prepay some of that and get a quote on that. Okay, legal and accounting fees. Okay, here. Oddly enough, inventory, I skipped this one. Again, this was a sample. That's Ben's bad. That's my bad. They would obviously need some initial inventory, and I should have put it here. Okay, so you kind of see rent deposits, it just goes straight down. So we kind of itemizing will actually help you work through the process and think. And honestly, everything that you're involved in, we ask you to do, we're going to actually review and refine. So we're eventually putting our heads together to give you the best outcome possible. Other initial startup costs, working capital left at the end that would be in the business checking account when all the costs, the bills are paid from the startup costs would be $5,000 the way I've estimated this. So total amount needed is $120,625. They are putting in $35,000. We're going to get them help them with a loan request for little over $85,000 to make sure that their total amount that they need is $126,25. The total capital structure source of funds, again, is $120,625. Those two have to equal, of course. Owner's equity, 35. They're borrowing the rest. 10-year note, 8% worst case rate right now that I kind of pigeonholed on that. This would be the monthly principal and interest payment. Okay. Source and use of funds. Okay. Oh, sorry, Vanessa. Yeah, we're going to make sure. I'm so sorry. Please don't hold that against us on the evals. I just wanted to make sure y'all are paying attention. No, we're going to make sure you've got a full PowerPoint presentation. And again, you're going to have access to Cecil personally, myself personally, and we're going to encourage you, if you're already working with a SCORE mentor or SBDC consultant, stick with those folks. You may encourage them. They could actually bring us in if through y'all's discussion you feel like we can add value, but they would remain your lead consultant. But we're going to wrap as much help around you as possible. So hopefully we can get into this. So let's just drill in. This is just an example of a profit and loss statement. Some folks refer to it as an income statement. This is an annualized view for the first 3 years. Again, don't hold the small font against me. This is usually on about a 20 by 30 screen, and we're going to make sure you get a copy. But better than that, we're actually going to take the lead in helping you build your own that aligns with your idea based on your market feedback we're getting from your market preliminary market feasibility work. Okay, but I'm just showing you kind of what it looks like. This would be an income statement or P&L, a monthly view. Okay, this is the annualized view for year one. And here's the monthly view. Okay, you kind of see there's some seasonality in this. Again, this is a secondhand store, is kind of a sample that I built up. And you'll see, like a lot of retailers, December's heavy. This one actually, I again picked it and just did it as a sample. This is not a real project, it's a sample. But I know if they're in Clemson, on the normal conditions, this is not a normal year. On normal conditions, we see really, you do very much in the fall. What happens in the fall at Clemson, we get a lot of visitors coming in on 7 weekends a year. And then of course, December, what's happening on retail in December, Christmas, of course. And then, so you kind of see that. So would that have impact on cash flow? Of course it would. So this is a cash flow statement. Okay. Here's a cash flow statement. Again, we push cash flow 36 months minimal monthly window. What are we testing? So you say, well, Ben, you got a profit and loss. What's the difference? Well, I've never seen anybody write a check for depreciation. I've never seen anybody write a check for amortization. Okay, so those are going to help your cash position relative, it'll be better than your profit loss would indicate. Well, that's great, Ben. Why do I need a cash flow? We know it's going to at least be as good as my P&L projection, and we did on monthly. That's correct, but there's other things that actually work against you on cash flow. Well, what is that? Well, remember that monthly payment? In this case, it was a little over $1,300. Well, the only thing that you're allowed by IRS to expense on the income statement is the interest. And here's the interest of that loan coming out here every month. But guess what? The bank wants the full principal and interest payment. Well, here's the principal piece coming out. Okay, so we understand then it's, again, that's going to have a negative impact on cash. Seasonality could play a factor as well. Some costs might be spread monthly. Rent, for example, typically doesn't vary 1 month for 1 month, but revenues could be stacked toward the back end of the year. So again, that could have an impact. If you're in a business that requires you to offer terms on the receivables to compete, that's a huge issue. That could definitely impact cash flow. So that's cash flow statement. Biggest thing, again, we're guarding here is here's your ending cash. You remember I said once the dust settled on your source and use of funds, you had a working capital allocation of $5,000. Here it is on my cursor at the top left. Now drop down at the end of month one, you started with 5,000, you burned down to 2,700. You okay? Yes. Still solid. Next month, you burned into it a little more. You got negative cash flow in this prototype first 2 months as projected. That's okay. I still have $1,800 in the bank. Now we're doing fine. Now things are starting to pick up. Okay, so now we're getting into the fall at what's happened to our cash flow. Started at 5, we got down as low as 1,800, but if we can hit our goals and hold our budget as projected, guys, we should have around 63,000 left in the cash position at the end of the year. Now, would you leave that there? No. You'd probably come up here and you'd take it as an owner's draw in and above the salary that you've been paying yourself along the way. But for sake of assessment, we leave it in for now. This is a balance sheet. This is just for the first year. This is actually the startup year, the base period, and then here's the end of year one as proposed. You remember one of the things we said is you should have a reasonable expectation to a reasonable return on investment. If you move forward, not only getting paid for the work you're doing in the business. Look, you remember we said on the source and use of funds in our example, you put in 35,000 equity. Okay, that was your base period owner's equity. That's your value currently less everything you owe of the business. Look at the end of year one. Okay, this is just book value. That has nothing to do with intangible value, and that's a whole different proposition. But you grew that 35 if you didn't take that excess cash out. Now it's 87,000. Okay, so we'll be able to track that year in and year out off, again, as a means of measuring twice even before you cut. You kind of see what the implications would be if you can hit your goals and hold your budget. Here's the break-even analysis that was generated. This is actually for year one. So we kind of see our break-even sales in dollars for this particular project is they need to approach 500,000 to make this thing work the way it's proposed. Okay. The projections were at 560. So we're feeling okay with this one. This is a financial analysis. Again, it's just kind of tested. I won't go over everything, but it's kind of tested and everything. So I can glance at that and say, okay, we're looking good. Beyond solvency, I would have checked debt service coverage ratio, which is just a metric that I'd look at, and we'd have a conversation about that if you were actually looking to borrow money, which this one was. And then beyond that, we're just kind of looking from our desk, just kind of make sure this thing, is in tune as proposed. If not, we've got to have a conversation and tweak this thing. We don't want to send you out with a business model such that in a game plan, if you hit your goals and held your budget in check as planned, the thing still won't work. You say, Ben, that could never happen. Well, I can assure you it has. And it's a sad thing. A project I worked years ago was down in Greenwood. It was actually over in McCormick. This go back almost 20 years ago. And, a gentleman came to me and he said, I want you to help me figure out next step for my business. Now, he put his life savings into buying a little property, a little small manufacturing space, and he built this business around it. And it was less than 3 years he's been in that. And by that time, he had lost his entire life savings before he reached out for help. He was real excited that he had just signed another contract to get his product in some more convenience stores in South Carolina. And so when I had a chance to look at his financials, I called him and I said, man, see if you can get out of that contract. We need to sit down. The thing was, his model was not sustainable. If he'd worked through the process, he would have not wasted and really lost his entire life savings. This was a grown man. He teared up in my office when I was sharing this bad news with him. And he said, Ben, I've got 3 grandkids. And I took my life savings because I only had enough to put one best case through college. And I put that into the business. That was really my goal, to create enough from that seed money to put them all three, and now I've just messed around and lost the whole thing, and I can't even help one of them. And from our side of the desk, that's exactly what he did. And it's very unfortunate, but it happens. Don't let it happen to you. And again, it's a process and tool and a support team we can wrap around you. Guys, once you work through this process, again, personal fit, lowest hurdle, first step. Market feasibility, second hurdle. That's where we're probably going to spend most of our time together, you and us working on this. Third step, a preliminary financial feasibility. We just kind of laid that out, what that's going to look like. We're going to drive the ship there. Don't worry about that. Then complete the rest of the applicable components of a plan if everything tests out. And your consultant, your mentor will help you understand which components are applicable at that point in time. What we say is work with us. It's free and confidential guidance. We are not mutually exclusive. We actually, the SBA that funds both of us through a matching grant in our case, they absolutely appreciate us working together because at the end of the day, we're all trying to help you guys be as successful as possible. And we love working as a team. I would say this to you, my challenge is to you, be willing to put in the work. You must be part of the process. Simply do your best. That's what we're asking on the front end. Do the best you can with the things that the components we're going to send to you per our directions. And you're not by yourself, but do the best you can. And then we're going to work to refine and scrub up the best. It's kind of an iterative process back and forth to get your ready to put your best foot forward. So this is step 4. If you remember when we started our 6-part steps, there were 4 of those actually shaded in green. And we said that's really, or shaded in blue, maybe that's really where you want to focus. That's all about preliminary feasibility. That's at the heart of our process and suggestion. And then, and only then, you want to move forward. So with completing the plan, I would suggest this. The value's in the process, guys, not the plan. The deliverable is irrelevant unless a key stakeholder needs it, like a bank. If you're borrowing money, may need that, right, to make a decision. But the value is in the process. General Eisenhower said, I've never seen a military plan worth its salt. And if you just stopped at the quote there, it would probably be shocking, right? That would be the headline to get somebody to buy a tabloid, right? General Eisenhower says he never saw a military plan worth its salt. But the full story went on like this, the full quote. He said, however, I could never put one of mine in battle without exploring all options. And that's what we're saying here. The value's in the process, not the plan. Now, you may have to use the plan, but it's in the process. Don't get lost on that. So why a plan? To expand upon your idea, to challenge you to find out more information that you really need to know sooner than later, then to use it as an assessment tool for feasibility before you actually make that cut. Again, measuring twice, cutting once, the old carpenter rule. It also helps you align strategies and tactics. Okay, and we'll get into that. If that's foreign to you, don't worry about it. That's why we're here, but it's very helpful to that. And I think you'll see you'll get that in due time for sure. It helps us define systems and standards, and it can be a very powerful management tool. It can really help you communicate again with key stakeholders, especially if you're looking if you're going to need a small business loan, the bank's going to require a plan as part of that proposal request. Most likely. And then again, it allows you to assess a scenario. If you're adjusting worst case, best case, just got information, this is going to impact my likely demand in this month. Think about the small businesses with the impact of COVID, just the ones around Clemson. Okay, you think they had to go back and do some scenario planning and adjust their game plan? Absolutely. Just like Mike Tyson said, they were hit in the mouth. What did we say? Be a Marine, improvise, adapt, and overcome. So again, scenario testing, best case, worst case, worst case scenario type of thing on the front end. And then let's just make sure you got a viable plan you feel confident with. Okay. So with that said, here's the components of a plan. Look at what, just let your eyes fall to the red where it says done. Folks, by the time we get to this part, through the first 4 hurdles that we said, that's really where we need to spend most of our energy. Oh, look what's already done. How much of the regular standard plan, you'll find outlines for plans. There's so many different variations, but they're covering basically the same thing. See what's done. The executive summary is something we'll go over. That usually happens at the very end. It's written last, okay? And then we can help you pull together what else is needed with your business, because it's going to vary. Speaking of executive summary, it presents first, but it's prepared last. It's a one page if possible, never more than 2, but it's a synopsis. Description of the business. These are some common components. What's the problem, your solution? Where are you going to be positioned? Again, that's unique selling position. In other words, that's another way of asking what we asked earlier in our preliminary work. Remember in step 2 on market feasibility, we said, what sets you apart? That's relative to the competition. That's at the heart of this. Overview of your team, a brief financial summary, and personal goals and our exit plan. This would be, I'd say, write a shorter letter. I think it was Abe Lincoln that quipped, I would have written you a shorter letter if I had more time. It really takes time and energy to distill the essence of a business into one-page format, and make sure that it's actually distilled and presented with a specific target in mind. Okay. And okay, so Yolanda's got to jump off here. We're wrapping this up. How can you apply for a mentor, for the mentor program? Yolanda, you're going to get an email. It'll be from Cecil and or myself. You'll likely get that tomorrow. If you haven't got it by Monday, then but you'll get that. You will get that for sure. You're registered, so we've got your email. You will get that, and it'll actually give you everything to move forward with us.
Let me just interrupt a little.
Yes, please.
Ben.
Yes.
That's come up several times. Actually, I'm not able to match up everybody with the registration. The display names that I see for people, for the attendees when they come in, are not always the same as a registration name that gives me all their contact information.
Okay.
So, and I sent out a message to everybody, but if they're different, please send me either an email, and I send everybody my email address through the chat, or send me a chat message with the name you registered with, and I'll try to match them up.
That's perfect. And I'm going to back up here in just a second. In addition to Cecil's request, you guys can take a photo or screenshot that. That's our contact information, just in case you don't get that email. But we're going to make sure we get that out tomorrow to all registered attendees using the email that you registered. Okay. So if you'll take a quick note of that, and then I'll give you another few seconds, screenshot or take a photo or what you need to do. And then I'm going to just go back and wrap us up here.
Yeah, just one more thing. I'm sorry for the interruption, Ben.
Thank you. Yes,
we're starting to lose people as we get into Q&A. I'm going to send out a poll to everybody. It should pop up on your screen. And if you would, please fill that in while we're going through the question and answer. Your feedback really helps us to improve on what we're doing, the content, how we structure the presentations and so forth. So please respond to it if you would.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Cecil. That's a great reminder. Appreciate it. We're just wrapping it up here, guys. Write a shorter letter. Again, was what now you can take your cursor and you can slide that at the top, and you can slide that poll to the side as you're working on that or getting ready to. But let's just walk through. This is, again, the meat of the process is in the first 4 steps as we laid it out. And again, that's at the heart of preliminary feasibility. Let's say we work you through that. Now, step 5, this is where concept kind of becomes, you start putting that, making it reality. Now you're obtaining capital commitment. That's the first step. Second, set the legal entity. We're going to have a conversation about your options there. Sole proprietorship versus LLC would be an example, versus subchapter S Corp versus a C Corp. We'll have that conversation. Do we need to have it now? Absolutely not. We need to understand, again, preliminary feasibility is where you need to be focused. We'll make sure you get good guidance on the appropriate legal entity once you've got the capital committed to the project. Why? Well, quite honestly, you're going to have some costs involved. Even if you do it yourself, minimal, you'll have some cost here at step 2 if you do anything other than default to a sole proprietorship. But we'll have that conversation. Once you've got the capital commitment, first and then second in order, sequenced legal entity is set. We're going to work with you on all. We'll hold your hand on this. Okay, it's going to be one-on-one past this, not small groups. So we're really going to drill in with you. Look at all this I shaded in blue. All these, I showed them as numbers 3 through 8. All these can be happening at one time once you take sequentially 1 and 2. And those things happening simultaneously could happen simultaneously, would then be opening the appropriate bank accounts, likely a checking account. And then in addition to a checking account, do you need a merchant services account? Well, again, whose perspective are you looking from? Your customers' experience. Can you compete if you can't accept Visa? It depends on what you're doing. We need to make sure that we understand that, because you may need a merchant service account with your bank agreement with your bank as well, and or vendor. So lease letter of intent. It's time to maybe go ahead and sign off on that now. Licensing, going ahead and filling out the paperwork and sending in the fees for licensing. Any IP placement requests, trademark, that type of thing. Well, now's the time for us to make a move on that. If you're going to, if you got something there you want, and we're going to walk through this with you, hold your hand on it. Develop marketing collateral to support your game plan. Now's the time. Staffing, yes, now's the time. So all this would happen again. First, second, the blue 3 through 8 could go on at the same time. Kind of third in order, and then we suggest a soft launch if possible, and then followed by a full launch. Usually in the soft launch, it depends on who the business type. It's not atypical for some to invite some community leaders, VIPs, friends, families, those folks, kind of influencers, if you would. And then try to kind of helps your staff get the kinks out a little bit too before you push forward on the full launch. So that's it. And then it's implement and control, step 6. So this is the process in review. Steps 1 through 4 is really the heart of it. It's all about preliminary feasibility, washing out risk. I said it many times, helping you have a process and support system for measuring twice before you cut. Just to help you shift the odds or mitigate those odds that we discussed on the front end of building and starting and continuing a successful business here in the U.S. Step 5, again, the pre-launch activities. I put the website, and again, you're going to get the full PowerPoint. This is the South Carolina Business One Stop. This particular site was created by our Secretary of State's office in partnership with the Department of Commerce out of Columbia. And it's a really great site, and we're going to work with you when you actually get into the pre-launch. You can actually go in and register your business as a project for free on the site. When we get to that point, please. Again, that's step 5. You can do that such that you can save your work and come back. It's got everything together. So the different paperwork you would want to file if you're going to file your own LLC, for example, if you're going to need an employer ID number with the IRS, which we're going to strongly suggest that you do, whether or not you're going to be hiring employees or not. Again, they've got the link there. If you need a retail license, they've got the link there for the Department of Revenue for the proper forms. So everything, it just kind of makes it all easier. You don't have to go through that portal to do that. But if not, it's kind of fragmented, but we'll help you and hold your hand. But it's just easier if we leverage that space, that particular portal. Step 6, implement and control. So again, this is the process and review. Again, as I mentioned earlier, for Cecil and myself, and our teammates at SCORE and our SBDC, this is a labor of love. We really feel like we're able to make a difference, and I hope through the experience so far, it's made a difference, and we really hope you're going to leverage us from a SCORE and SBDC perspective. So with that said, you've got that eval on your end. If you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and knocking that out. It's very short. It's 10 questions. And again, remember all the good times we had, and let's see if we can. If you'll go ahead and knock that out, I'm going to consult, I guess, with Cecil on the chats. And then if you've got any questions, comments, if you want to push those into chats, questions or comments, that'd be great. And then I think what we'll do is maybe go back up.
Just one thing that you might want to comment on, Ben, that a question came up early on, and I gave a brief response through chat, but you might want to elaborate on it. The question was, can a small business be a nonprofit? And of course, the answer to that is yes, but you might want to elaborate a bit.
Sure, that's a great question. The answer, from our perspective, yes. Now, SCORE and the SBDC, again, the Small Business Administration, as Cecil mentioned earlier, really underwrites what we do and directs that. So their mission is 100% focused on for-profit small businesses in the U.S. But with that said, the SBA actually gave SCORE some clearance previously, but it gave our SBDC nationwide some clearance about 5 years ago to help local small nonprofits when we have the capacity to do that. The process is the same. I worked with 4 nonprofits, I think, in the first quarter, between fourth and first quarter last year, to get their start, and all 4 of them are up and going. So the answer is yes. Now there's some additional layers of expertise. A group that used to be branded as SCANPO, as South Carolina Association of Nonprofit Organizations, they were down in Florence at the let's see, they were down in, I think in the Darlington area, but bottom line is they rebranded. They're out of Columbia now. They're SC Together. But if you Google, but we'll put you with them at the appropriate time. Again, the front end would be feasibility. The process would be the same to a certain point. And then at some point, when you get into finishing step 5, finishing the plan, at that point, we really want to drill in and make sure that you're aligned with SC Together. They deal with best practices for nonprofits, accreditation options for certain types of nonprofits that can actually position you to, to be more successful on the donor support side and efficiency side as well, of course. So, but yes, start with us. As the same, we'd be honored to work with you, and we get those requests a lot. Let's see. Cecil, do we have, do we need to go back up to the top, or?
I think we've covered all the questions that came in. I've answered a lot in the background while you were talking. that were really basic information. One question that you might want to elaborate on, this has come up a couple of different times with my clients. Somebody had a question about I think they started a business in another state and then they moved to South Carolina. Do they need to start over? What might be the process for something like that?
Okay. All right. So if I understand correctly, you've got an established business in another state. You're relocated here. You've got options. The easiest thing. So again, it kind of depends on what's the legal structure of the business. If you're a sole proprietorship, it's going to follow you anyway, because that's going to be a Schedule C stuff, obviously with your personal return. So you'll just, if you're registered, if the state you're leaving has a registration vehicle for you as a sole proprietor, then you'll need to clean that up as you depart, but everything else will fall into place. If it's a different legal entity, we can have a conversation. You may or may not need to move that, quite honestly. So we just have a conversation. It just kind of depends on the legal entity, but yeah, there's no barriers. Now, depends on what type of business it is. There may be different regulations from one state to the other. So we really just need to have a conversation and kind of go from there.
Okay. One more question came in that I can give a little bit response to, and you jump in if you'd like, Benny. Not sure if anyone else has lately experienced the frustration behind lenders, even through SBA not willing to loan to startups right now. I don't know that is really the case. First of all, the SBA doesn't actually make the loan. The SBA will back the loans that come through banks. So the banks, there are some banks in the area that are helping new businesses. You made the comment that you have to be at least a year in business. That's not always true. What you have to have is a really good business plan, like Ben was talking about through the course of the workshop. And you have to have a solid plan, a solid financial plan, well thought through, cover all the points that Ben mentioned in the presentation well, and then you can go to local banks. And my experience has been with working with my clients, local community banks, you're likely to be more successful than going to the national banks. But once you talk to a bank, if they're interested, then they can get SBA involved, or that's the normal process. They would go to the SBA and see if the SBA would help support the loan. Ben, you want to jump in and add to that? I'm not hearing you.
Sorry about that. I had muted myself. I would just echo your sharing. What usually happens, most of the time it would start with a lender, but I'd say start with a lender, but it really hopefully will start with, with SCORE or the SBDC resources to assist you. And then just to make sure you've got everything worked out, because you really owe it to yourself and your family first to pass judgment on the project before you ask a lender to, and make sure you've got put your best foot forward. So, if we do that, part of what we're going to do and be able to add, I think assist you with, quite honestly, would be to make sure you understand the optimal source of capital that fits the project scope. So as we're doing that, some of those may likely be, if it's a startup or early phase project, it's most likely going to require SBA guarantee to Cecil's point, and there's a mechanism for that. But we can actually unravel that mystery. You'll understand exactly what's going on, and beyond that, usually we're able to make calls on your behalf. We work with these folks day in and day out in our respective communities on the lending side who play in the small business space. So, it'd be an honor to do that. We do that all the time. So again, you're not just by yourself. And be honest with you, this is about starting a business. But I would just suggest this. We hope you'll consider us a long-term resource to lean on. As I mentioned in the opening, we exist not only for the startups, for existing healthy businesses as well. So hopefully, you'll stick with us, and we can probably save you a few steps as you go through the various phases of a business, from start through growth into maturity.
There's another question that came up that I missed earlier on. It's from, well, I won't use the name. Is there a resource or checklist specific for what you need to do in South Carolina to start a food-based business?
Yes. Short answer is yes. And DHEC, and again, we can actually help kind of, provide that type of guidance for you. SCDHEC, you'll find what they need. They have a checklist on their site such that you can assess if you're actually going to be under their auspices based on what you've got in mind. And certain things in the foods side would trigger DHEC blessing, and some hoops there, and certain things that you can avoid and come out just fine. So, that's really not a issue there, as long as you're aware on the front end. And what, of course, we want to work with you, because, if you're getting, it could have an impact, if you would, on startup cost, significant impact, differential on startup costs, for example. So we need to handle that on the front end, and that'll be part of the conversation you'd be having with your SCORE or SBDC rep. So make sure, you connect, and we're going to send this follow-up email to everybody that's registered for the program. Again, with the copy of the PowerPoint. The biggest thing that we're asking is, really, we're going to focus on walking you through the initial 2 steps, get you started on the first 2 steps. Is it the right fit for you, the right time, type of conversation, such that you can make your own determination. We're not going to make it for you, pass judgment on it, but we'll have a conversation with you, and then really have you pointed through that email with an attachment that will get you going on your on the work we're asking you to put forward first on the market feasibility side. And again, if you recall, what we're asking you to do is whatever we push forward, just do your best. It's not a roadblock. It's not intended to be a brick wall. Do your best. Understand that gives us a starting point. Gives us a rough draft. If you already have a draft, that's great. We meet you where you are. But that's kind of our motto.
Asley Billy is the display name. Sorry, has raised your hand, but I don't know how to respond to that. Can you, Asley, can you send me a chat with what you would like to, if you have a question or something?
Okay. While that's pending arrival through the chat, Bryant asked, how about opening multiple businesses within the same building? The location really wouldn't impact anything if you've got multiple businesses. We just need to have a conversation. Do you have those in separate legal entities such that you can compartmentalize risk to the best of your ability? Or do you have those wrapped into one business unit? Legal entities. So those are all conversations that we could have. It wouldn't likely, in the same building, it's not really going to impact anything from that. It's, okay. Jennifer, while we're waiting again on additional questions through chat, Jennifer asked, is there a way to change a profit into a nonprofit? And if not, can I add a nonprofit to my for-profit? Well, Jennifer, the easiest thing would be, the easiest, my suggestion would be you would probably want to keep those two separate entities. And they may have a strategic affiliation one with the other such that you could compartmentalize risk. That would be my suggestion. You can't dovetail a nonprofit into a for-profit structure. In general, social entrepreneurship, we're talking about local kind of growing. Those of you interested in growing a local nonprofit, you'll kind of find a common terminology of social entrepreneurship. You kind of Google some stuff on that, but it's really one and the same. But what you'll find there, if you go down that path, one of the downsides to it is from a nonprofit standpoint. Let's say you build value in the business beyond the book value of the assets in fair market condition. If you've got a for-profit business, there's a market likely for that. I deal with acquisition projects every week. Every week, it seems like. I just had one, a new one came in this week. It's guys buying a business in one of the counties in the upstate of South Carolina, and he's selling the business for $800,000. There's some real estate involved, but the intangible value of the business is considerable, above and beyond fair market value of the tangible assets. So he's built some wealth in that from an intangible asset value. There's market for that. The seller's likely subsidizing, if not underwriting their retirement based on that life's work of building that business up. Just like my friend I mentioned earlier, Terry McKinney did with his business up in Maine before he sold it, moved down here. If you do that on the social entrepreneurship side, you can't you can't sell it. It has to be transferred. It has to remain intact and/or be transferred into a similar structured nonprofit. So I've ran into a keynote speaker, one in particular, really pulled at my heartstrings. He was a eighth grade math teacher in Brooklyn. He was a national keynote speaker at one of the Association of Small Business Development Centers over 10 years ago. I still remember him. I remember his face. And he was asking us, please share with any clients that come to you guys regarding social entrepreneurship, looking at nonprofit structures. Yeah, it may help them on the front end, get some entity to partner with them and request some grants to help them. But he said it was a rude awakening after I put 20 years into my nonprofit to help kids get math better, and we were very successful. He said it really set me aback when it really dawned on me, or it came home to roost, that I couldn't profit from that. When I could see in the private sector some of my competition, the estimated value of those companies. So yeah, just have to think about it. Nothing wrong with them. And we'll help you any way we can. Is it wise to change to a new bank for business purposes? Lee, that's a great question. I'd say have a conversation with your bank. I'd also, I usually kind of start with folks and you may want to ask them, what they do offer for small business services or products and services. Let's just make sure it's going to meet your needs. But there's nothing wrong with that. They know you best. And, and I'm thinking, when you get to a point of, business checking account, merchant service account, that kind of thing. On the loan side, what we really have to do is have a conversation again, and we would have us together about what loan program actually fits the project scope. And then if your bank plays in that space, if you're in the upstate of South Carolina, we're going to know if your bank's going to have an interest in that before you mention it to them, quite honestly. And we'll have that conversation for sure.
Let me add to the Hasley's your question about banks. One caution I would have is before you get into doing anything very significant with your business, you really want to set up a business account that's separate from your personal account. You start mixing funds, it makes things complicated from a tax standpoint. Down the road, it can also break, if you have an LLC, if you're sharing the same bank account with your personal account, it breaks down most of the legal protections for the LLC and so forth. So the safe way to go is get a business account once you start doing what I would call real business. In the early stages, while you're thinking about it and you're doing different preliminary things, it doesn't matter. But once you start doing business, you'd be better off to have a separate account.
Excellent point. All that energy and effort that you would put in and money to creating a separate legal entity other than your person, if you're a sole proprietor, that's what you're going to be. All that goes out the window if you're not following Cecil's advice and you're commingling and with your personal accounts. So again, this is just part of this, very subtle, but again, when you get into the past the feasibility work, that's really where the work is. Quite honestly, that's how you're going to drive out the most risk for you guys when you're looking to start a business. And then step 5, pre-launch activities. This is where we'll have the conversation that we're really kind of drilling into now. It's very nuanced. It's very specific to one situation in particular. So any other questions? The 11 counties that you guys cover, Cecil, can you reference those again, or would you like me to give us? I think I know where your footprint is.
I'm sorry, reference what?
Let's see. We had one question. Could you name again the counties where your chapter covers?
I didn't see that question come in. Yeah, the counties that we cover are Oconee, Anderson, and Greenville principally, but we've also have some clients that are south of Anderson. I can't remember the county down there, and we have had some people in Pickens too. So basically, west of Greenville to the state line is pretty well covered by our group.
Fantastic. And then on behalf of the Small Business Development Center, again, we're part of a statewide consortium, so we've got statewide teammates, and I see Erin Yates weighed in, and I agree with you, Cecil, on the part with the bank, and she referenced one of my statewide colleagues, Robert Jones. He's at our Charleston area Small Business Development Center. That's part of our USC team. And part of our USC region, and she says that experience has been, in her words, fabulous. And so this is great. From an SBDC standpoint, again, you'll find counterparts to us in all 50 states and U.S. territories. In South Carolina, we've got somebody covering all 46 counties. So the easiest thing, again, you can respond to me and I can assist you with registering and make sure you get to your closest, the office that's most convenient for you. That's not a problem. So we'll be honored to do that. You see in the contact information, you can simply go to our statewide website. It's referenced sbdc.com. And then you'll actually be able to locate your nearest office. If you want a personal introduction from me, again, you can reach out to me through the email, and I'll be glad to make a personal call for you and share with them to make sure they give you preferential treatment for being one of ours. Okay, be happy to do it.
Same thing is true for SCORE. SCORE is a nationwide organization. We're just a small piece of it. It covers most of South Carolina with different chapters, and in every state as well. So if you go to www.score.org, score.org. That will give you the national website, and you can find out more information from them beyond what we do with the Piedmont chapter.
Fantastic.
I think there's one more question that came in. Do I need a business license before I start selling clothing?
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to assume when you say selling, I assume you're looking to retail. You would, and then so you're going to likely need not only and when you apply for the retail license, you would do that through the South Carolina Department of Revenue that's in Columbia. So when you make that application, and again, we can assist you with that. We just want to make sure that you've got everything kind of locked and loaded. They'll also set up the sales tax withholding account on your behalf. And then there'll be a frequency. Most small businesses, they'll start, they initially will want you to send that sales tax that you collect in monthly. There's a specific form that you'll have to use. And even if you have no sales that month, you'll need to facilitate that electronically to let them know you had zero, so they'll know you didn't just miss it. If not, you'll get a love letter from them. And but yeah, it's a process, and we can help you walk through that. But you'll need a retail license.
And then this one more question. It's right down your alley, Benny. What are some solid ways to scope the market for your business?
Could you repeat that one?
Sure. What are some solid ways to scope the market for your business? So it's how do you do kind of a market analysis?
I got you. Scope the market. I thought you said solid waste. I'm like, yeah, that is right up my alley, I guess.
I am from Michigan, so you might not be picking up on the accent.
I love it. No, you're a Michigander. I love Michiganders. No, I've got, let's see, good memories with close friends from Michigan, and you're one of my favorite. And Andrea's from Michigan as well. Our office manager in Greenville, who we really love and appreciate. So that's a great question. The industry, I always think about it, start big picture and work down. So from a macro standpoint, let's just start with U.S. based view and work down. Depends on, we do work with folks who are in an international side of things, but for most of our smalls and our folks that we're working with, it's U.S. based down. We pay a little over $20,000 a year here in South Carolina to access the latest and top shelf industry outlook information for the various industries here in the U.S. And we make that type of information available to our clients. It's along with our guidance. We also work with you to make sure you've got the right type of local top vendor there would be ESRI that would take the local demographic data, buying patterns, these types of things, and make it palatable for you. And we actually, we have a special initiative that I've been fortunate to be a part of on the early phase side, going on at Clemson with our students. So it's our student center. Dr. Ezgi Farron is building that for us, and she's been an absolute superstar at her work. So we've got a team of 5 undergrads that were hand selected by Izzy and trained. We also are we have complements of grad assistants, but Dr. Farron has a PhD in GIS, government information systems, and marketing, a master's in marketing with an emphasis on entrepreneurship. So again, the short answer to that is we'd love to put our team around you and then leverage our resources that we've got on the market research side to supplement what you could do on your own. And most of what you're going to probably do is probably Google search. and try to understand who your competitors are and what their price points are, and spend some time on their site, try to understand how they're trying to position themselves from a branding standpoint. But we'll be guiding what your work. And again, in the presentation, what we're asking you guys to do is do the best you can with what we ask you to do. And then our team will work hard to review and scrub it up with suggestions. And then we're kind of putting all hands on deck for you at that point.
Another couple questions came in, Ben. Is there anything specific I need to know about starting a dog breeding business?
Be careful. I would say first and foremost. But yeah, I've actually got clients in that space, and I've got some that I think they just launched last year, but I've had clients in that space going back several years. So yeah, that's something that's not foreign to us. And yeah, I would just say, understand your market and how they get their information, and make sure that's where you're spending, the budget that you've got to, get the word out there. Most of the ones that I've been working with have been very successful. And they typically say, stay kind of sold, kind of booked up, for pups that aren't here yet. So, but it, just kind of, but they're doing it on a smaller scale, but but yeah, we can help you with that. I've got a young lady that was really, we bonded, my wife and I bonded with when she was a student at Clemson that worked with us. And so we stayed in touch all these years and close friends with she and her husband now. And they're actually in Charleston. And he's an architect downtown in the historic area there. And but Katie's been building a kind of a dog grooming business, boarding and grooming. And so we've been involved with a lot of that, but just on the breeding side, yes, we've helped some folks, and I know we can put some information around you that will save you a few steps for sure.
And I think there is one more. I applied for my retail license on South Carolina doorway today. Today, actually, mine let me know to provide, I think it means let me know how to provide tax info monthly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's from Aaron Yates.
Yes.
Aaron said, I applied for retail license with the SCDOR online, and they did. So she's confirming what we said earlier.
Okay. Gotcha.
They being the DOR did let her know to provide tax, the sales tax information monthly. And Aaron, that's don't take that personally. That's typically where they start you. Now, when you've had a relationship for a while with DOR, you may want to petition and just reach out and ask if you could actually shift into a quarterly position with sending that in. Sometimes they will allow that.
I think that's all the questions.
Okay. Guys, I've enjoyed our time together. Now, Jennifer is asking if there's a license somebody needs to sell e-commerce, an e-commerce business focused on the Etsy platform. That's a great question, Jennifer. If it depends on who you ask, I can tell you what the law says in South Carolina. It says if you're selling folks, it says yes, and the short answer is yes. If you're selling to folks in South Carolina, that's the case. And then out of state, typically they haven't put that burden on small businesses yet to collect from out of state purchasers. The same thing works on our end as customers. You guys are recognized to question on your state tax return as a citizen here in South Carolina for you to put down how much out of state e-commerce that you've bought. And that gets to the point of trying to collect some of that. The states, and South Carolina's been involved with a group of states for some time now, trying to litigate a settlement, an arrangement on how that should work. But the short answer is yes, and we can connect you with the folks at DOR that actually deal with that every day because they get bombarded with it. But yeah, the Etsy, the platform, they should help you designate your home state, and if you're dealing with a kind of a point of sale software that's outside of the Etsy platform, most of those would allow you to designate a home state, and then you can make sure the sales tax rate should be automatically computed with what you're doing. Fantastic. Guys, I really appreciate the opportunity of being here with you guys this evening with Cecil, and very much so. And I hope you got value out of our time together. I think what we're trying to do is, again, push to you, make sure it's not something that's we're going to meet you where you're at. And most of the time on a startup standpoint, this is really where our focus needs to be, on preliminary feasibility. And then we're going to hold hands and walk you through those pre-launch activities that we discussed as part of the process. And even, as I mentioned earlier, even through and beyond the implementation, and because it's a never-ending process. I've got clients that have been with me, long-term clients, for over 20 years. Hope you guys will, hope we'll get a chance to work with you guys as well. And with that, I'll say thanks to Cecil, and I'll yield the floor for the last words to my partner in crime, Cecil.
Well, we want to thank everybody for attending, and especially for your feedback. This is the first time actually Ben and I've done this through Zoom, and so it was a good learning experience for me.
You did a great job. No hiccups on the technical side, and we really appreciate you guys. Again, I'll be teaming up with Cecil tomorrow, and we're going to get a recap email out to everybody through the email that you registered with. It will have a copy of the PowerPoint, and most importantly, it'll actually provide you specific guidance as to how to move forward. And that would include how to seek a mentor if you haven't already with SCORE, and how to seek an SBDC consultant if you haven't already through our statewide team as well. So we look forward to hopefully getting a chance to work with you if that's where the future lies. But be safe, and thank you guys so much.